Hello, welcome to Lecture 5. This lecture is about evaluating survey data collection methods. So the previous lecture was talking about looking at secondary data and evaluating secondary data and how we might use it. This lecture is looking at primary data and ways that we might use surveys to collect primary data. Okay, in this lecture, there we go, survey methods and types. It's fairly straightforward, this one. There's lots of ways that you can survey. You may be able to think of more than I actually have addressed in here, but it's worth having a look and having a think, and feel free to let me know if you think I've missed anything. Okay, the reading is chapter 5, I think, or 7. I think it's chapter 5. Yeah, so there's chapters 5 and 7 for week 3. So if this is supposed to be chapter 7, I'm sorry, but it's one of those two. So if you read chapters 5 and 7 for week 3, you'll be well and truly across all the information you need. Right. Okay, learning outcomes again. Comparing and contrasting research data collection methods and explain what it means to be competent in primary data collection. That's just, oh look, reading chapter 7, that's it. I think this is actually chapter 7 that you need to read for this one. Sorry about that. Okay, so back to our 11 steps. We identified information types and sources in the previous lecture. This one is about determining methods of accessing data. So secondary data, as discussed in lecture 4. Primary data is data collected specifically for the problem at hand, and it's usually some kind of survey. Okay, so a survey is collecting data from a representative number of respondents using a pre-designed questionnaire. So here we go. I've given you a nice little picture of a survey here. This is the survey, the start of the survey that I used for my PhD. I'm more than happy to talk at length about the survey I used for my PhD, because that's what PhD people do. They talk about it a lot. Actually very boring, but this particular survey I administered to 550 people, tourists who were visiting Cairns, and this bit here you can see was asking a few basic sort of demographic questions. There are some schools of thought who think that that should be at the end, and there's different reasons for that. This one I put everybody's demographic questions up the front, and just to find out what kind of tourists they were. So these are the sort of questions that I asked and analysed. So there's a number of different basic survey methods. There's person-administered, computer-assisted, self-administered, computer-administered, or mixed mode, which is kind of a bit of everything. And you can stand there and scratch your head with your pencil like that man there if you want to think about this. Usually the options are made easy for you based on things like time constraints or resource constraints, whether you have access to computers or not, whether you have any money to help you, whether you can pay staff to do it for you. They're usually things that actually dictate how you decide to run a survey. Okay, so there's advantages and disadvantages. This lecture you will discover is the lecture of advantages and disadvantages, the happy face and the sad face. This is to help you think about evaluating things. I'm not going to tell you that this is right and this is wrong and this is what you should do, because the thing is that for every situation there is a reason why you would choose one or the other of these in each case, okay? So all I'm doing is outlining all the possible pros and cons of all the different types that you can different types of surveys you can use. But in general, there's the advantages of the surveys are that they're standardised, they're easy to administer, they have an ability to tap unseen things if you ask the right questions, which is very important. They're suitable to tabulation and statistical analysis, again, if you design your survey correctly and well. And it has a sensitivity to subgroup differences. So you can actually measure within groups, between groups, what relies on what, back to our correlation and causation. You know, as people get older, they prefer to stay in more expensive hotels. asking those sort of questions in the truth and mystery. That's the sort of question we ask anyway. The disadvantages of surveys. They're usually very quantitative. There isn't a lot of qualitative data that you get from surveys. Sometimes you can ask an open-ended question or 2 or 3, but usually people don't give you a lot qualitatively when they're writing them out themselves, or if you have to record them. It can be really time-consuming, so you don't tend to get a lot of qualitative data, which can limit the types of findings that you have. It can answer what, where, who, and what, where, and who, but not always reveal the why. You need to have a grasp of the issues before you actually have the questionnaire designed. And you remember from a previous lecture that I actually mentioned that you sometimes need to do your exploratory research first. You need to get out there and actually understand the issues, so you're asking the right questions. The quality of your questions, the essential thing about having a survey designed well and actually having quality data to give you quality outcomes. But you need to understand what questions you've got to ask first. And it's also the disadvantage is that it's open to sampling and non-sampling errors, which I can talk about a bit later. Okay, so a person-administered survey. So going back to person, see, we can see person-administered there in the basic survey methods. Here we go. This is a person-administered survey. Person-administered surveys is where an interviewer reads questions either face-to-face or over the phone to the respondent and records the answers. So I say, hello, how was your day today? Are you aged 30 to 35 or 36 to 41, and so on and so forth, and you tick and cross and you fill everything in and say, oh, thank you for your time, and then you trot away and you use that information to plug into your analysis and you can walk away happy. So the advantages of that is that you get feedback straight away. As I'm asking you, say, don't be silly, that's a ridiculous category, 30 to 35. What about 30 to 39? That suits much better for me. Or, oh, don't be so silly, why are you asking that question? Straight away you can actually get the feel that there's something wrong with what you're doing. Or maybe people seem confused when you ask a set question, those sort of things. So that's the advantage of doing your actual own in-person survey. You get the rapport, so people, if they like you, people might tell you more information than you may have got otherwise if they were filling in the survey themselves. You get quality control, so if people are going, yeah, I don't care, yeah, whatever, just chuck down this, you go, yeah, that's okay, I don't need your survey, your information, because you clearly don't care. And adaptability, so you can actually chop and change it to maybe get the answers that you need. The disadvantages are that humans make errors. So while you're recording things, you might not get it right. It takes ages. It can cost a lot because it takes ages, because usually you've got to pay someone to do it, or your time actually costs you as well. Sometimes there's a fear of interviewer evaluation or desirability bias, which means people are worried about saying, yes, I actually drink. Well, I mean, a classic example was the other day I had to fill in some medical survey and I had to say how many drinks I have a day, and I was like, I don't know if I want to put this down. What is that person going to think of me if they know I have a drink every day? Is that, and so you may be inclined, or how much you weigh, or all sorts of things, what things you like and don't like. You might like them, but you might be a little ashamed to say it. You might intend to vote for Donald Trump, for example, but be ashamed to say that because you don't think that may be socially acceptable. So they're the sort of interview evaluation and desirability bias, the things that can come in when you're dealing with a person face-to-face. Computer-assisted surveys. Okay, so they're sort of like person-administered surveys, but they have assistance from a computer. So you could be standing there holding an iPad, recording the answers in an iPad. You could be showing people pictures on an iPad. You could be providing a form for someone to complete, so you can ask them questions and they can tick yes or no. So it's kind of a combination of a person but using computer aided stuff. Okay, so the advantage of this is it's a bit quicker, it's more error free. You can use images and video, so you can get a little bit more multimedia and a bit more technical, and you get immediate capture of the data, so you don't have to walk away and sit down with the computer and actually enter all that data into SPSS or Excel or whatever. The disadvantages are that you might need technical skills to be able to set that up. You might have to understand about computers and stuff. And the setup costs can be high. You know, if you have to buy a program that does it, or you might need an iPad to take with you, or you might need multiple iPads. Right, self-administered surveys. This is where the respondent completes a survey on their own with no agent to assist. This is a paper and pencil survey. Our survey that we operate, our longitudinal survey that I mentioned a couple of lectures ago, that we administer out at the airport here in Cairns, is a self-administered survey. We say, hello, I'm Alison from Sydney University in Cairns. I wondered if you, are you a tourist? Yes, you're a tourist. Okay. I'm wondering if you would mind filling in this survey for us. That would be very nice. And they say, oh yes, I'm bored and I've nothing to do for 15 minutes until my plane leaves. So they take the survey and I walk away. And then I come back and I offer them a Mentos and give it to them and say, thank you very much for filling in our survey. They say, wow, that's great. I love my Mentos. I'm so glad I filled in that survey. And we all walk away happy. That's a classic paper and pencil survey. And that's how we administer our survey in the Cairns airport at the moment. The advantages of this is that there's a reduced cost. I don't have to stand there and interview every single person. I can get 50 interviews in about 2 hours, 50 surveys completed in about 2 hours. The respondent has control, and there's a reduced desirability bias because I don't know which one's whose survey, so they'll usually put in probably more honest responses. The disadvantages are also that there's respondent control. They go, you know what, I'm sick of this survey. I'm just going to chuck it down here. I pick it up, walk away, not knowing that's only half complete, and that actually impacts our numbers that we collect. There's a lack of monitoring, so people could lie. They do all sorts of things and write messages and all sorts of stuff on your surveys, which don't fit into your data collection models. And the other thing is that you really have to think about your questions because they have to be self-explanatory. That needs to be a high-quality questionnaire. Right, okay, computer-administered surveys. This is where the computer plays an integral role in posing questions and recording the answers. So I think probably a computer-administered survey would be a SurveyMonkey Qualtrics style survey. Okay, so the advantages are that they have user-friendly features, they're relatively inexpensive, and again, people can fill them in the privacy of their own home with a fair bit of autonomy. Sorry, not autonomy, what's the word? Anonymity, that's the one. So if they're anonymous, they may be more inclined to give honest answers. The disadvantages are that it requires a computer or a device. So there could be some real biases in your data because older people or younger people who don't have access to this stuff or might have reduced reading capabilities, may not have internet connection. There's a whole bunch of, or may just be confused about how to use computers in general. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you might be limiting your group. That might be fine. You might not need those people in your respondents, but you have to be aware of those sampling errors. Okay, mixed mode surveys, hybrid surveys, otherwise known as. They use multiple data collection methods, and they are increasingly popular. You have the same sort of survey and you ask it across a range of different ways. So, for example, you get loads of people, but it's really cheap and easy to get those ones who are all on computers and stuff, but you might have to whip down to the local aged care facility to collect the people who would never fill this in online. Maybe they would. I'm not casting aspersions on people in retirement villages, but some older people are less likely to fill these things in. So it's important for you to understand that, you know, you can actually use both to get your data if it's really critical that you get that broader range of people. Advantages are that you have multiple avenues to achieve your data collection goal, but the disadvantages are that the survey mode might affect the response. So people might be inclined, because of, say, for example, the desirability bias, you might get different answers for strange reasons in your face-to-face versus your online, for example. So it adds a level of complexity which can be quite difficult. So you'd really want to be sure that it was necessary to do a hybrid survey. Okay, data collection. Have I got, yep, that's right, data collection methods. Okay, so just going through some of the sort of standard ones. So person-administered and computer-assisted surveys. You can do in-home surveys, you know, knock on the door, come in and talk to people, or show people things on your iPad, whatever. Intercept ones. Now, in the textbook, this is called mall intercept ones, but when I did my PhD research, I didn't intercept people in the mall. I intercepted them on the beach and in other sort of public areas. And I didn't think that mall intercept, I don't think we just want to be thinking about malls. I think we want to be thinking about all the public areas that we might be able to approach people. Of course, you need permission to do that as well. And in office, and that can be really good if there's busy people who you're not going to get any other way, can actually go and see, you know, busy executive managers and things like that. So I've just given you a bit of a happy face, sad face kind of overview of the types of, the reasons why you may or may not try different types of surveys. So you get a privacy and rapport. So if you're talking about things like really sensitive things like abortions or domestic violence, although in-home maybe not, those sort of more sensitive issues, an in-home survey might be gambling problems maybe, death, dealing with death. Things that, you know, they're just much more appropriate to discuss in people's homes. They're expensive, but the data you get is probably very valuable. Intercept surveys are less expensive, but you get limited respondents, and in a public place, people might be less likely to talk about certain things that matter to them. You know, feminine hygiene products, I'm not going to discuss those with you when I'm standing at the top of the escalators in Cairns Central. You know, you've got to think about what questions people are going to want to talk about in what situations. Like I say, in the office, you can get busy people, and that can be sometimes really hard to access people in the office, and it can be high cost. Okay, still on person-administered and computer-assisted surveys. There's the phone survey. So you get a fast turnaround and quality control, and you get, it's a reasonable cost. I think we all know that hanging up on people who call us for phone surveys is a fairly de rigueur thing in Australia. I'm not really sure that, you know, a lot of people just don't even have a home phone anymore to try and avoid that sort of calling. So it's limited to people who have phones and who would answer the phone and discuss this stuff. You might end up with a whole bunch of sort of, you know, lonely old people who don't have anything else to do. You know, I'm thinking of my, you know, my grandmother who sits around watching television all day. She might, you know, have a chat, but that might not be the target market you're really looking for. Okay, computer-assisted telephone interviews, CATI. So the computer reduces human error, real-time data entry, quality control. But this is sort of like, hello, I'm calling you about the next election or voting intentions or something like that. And you sort of think, I'm not speaking to a computer, and hang up. So it's obviously working because people are still doing it, but there are really high setup costs, and you have to be really sure that you're going to get enough people to do it. Now, I don't know why. Oh yeah, I've accidentally left that heading there, so we'll go on to the next one, computer-administered surveys. Okay, so computer-administered surveys are fully automated, so they're CATs. Again, computer reduces human error, and I've just put it annoys people because really in the end it does. So there's the computer-assisted telephone interviews. Sorry, I've got this a little bit wrong. So the telephone survey is one that's run completely by the computer, and the interviews is where people ring, but they have a computer to assist them with the questions and answers. Sorry, that was my mistake. This is not something that I ever use as my data collection, so I'm just sort of giving you the basics here. So the computer automated telephone survey is the one, hello, you know, that sort of standard automated message, and it can really annoy people. And also people can't even talk to you. If you think, that doesn't really fit with me, I can't say anything, I can't do anything, I can't say, look, I'm sorry, but I think your category's wrong, I don't fit into any of those categories, and it just drives you a little bit nuts. But you do have really high quality control, and you get real-time data entry. Again, that's really valuable. You don't have to sit down and process it later, so you can analyse it really quickly. Online, ease of creating and posting, fast turnaround, computer data file, and you get results. You need internet, computer literacy, and design challenges again. So still similar kind of pros and cons. Self-administered, I've already talked about this a bit, but the types you can have are group, drop-off, where you just leave it for someone to pick it to do later, and mail. So you post it out. It has got a low cost, but it's also well known to have a really low response rate, the mail survey. So only certain types of respondents tend to respond to mail surveys, and that might not be the type of respondent that you're looking for. Okay, so when you're thinking about a survey method, you've got to think, oh, I need quality, but I have to balance that with time, money, the type of interaction, cultural considerations, and infrastructure considerations, okay? So the type of interaction, you know, if you're sampling products versus getting someone's opinion on world events, you're going to ask different, you're going to potentially use a different survey method. You know, you need to be thinking about what people actually how people think through these processes and what would work best to get the best results. And that's all part of really clever survey design. Cultural consideration. So there's appropriate ways of dealing with your target. Now, I was in Dubai last year, and I have to say that I'm pretty sure an intercept survey in the mall in Dubai wouldn't work because, you know, particularly if a male was administering it, because there were women in the full black gowns. And I think that probably they would not feel comfortable with a man coming to ask them a question, or in fact even me in my Western clothes. So, you know, you have to think about the people that you're talking to and who they may or may not want to talk to. A home survey in Scandinavia won't work because people in Scandinavia, like not everyone, but generally there's a cultural thing that people in Scandinavia don't like having strangers in their home. So they're the sort of important things that you need to think about when you're thinking about who you really want to talk to. And infrastructure considerations. Do people have phones, internet, letterboxes? I think less than 10% of Indians have phones. So if you're going to do a phone survey in India, you're only going to get a set demographic of people, and it may not really be the people you're after. So you really have to think about who and how this is all going to work out for you. So there's a lot to think about when you're thinking about choosing a survey method. I think that's the end. Yes, it is. All right. Thank you very much for listening. And like I say, if you've got any questions, Tuesday at 12 to 12:30 is the time to ask those, or email me. Thank you.